I've always been okay admitting when I was wrong, incorrect. And if you look back 4 weeks, we're talking about strata insurance and how that was going to be the thing of real estate 2020. Boy, were we wrong, hey?
Oh, geez, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't really see it coming. And I know a lot of people did not really take this seriously in Canada. We were seeing photos on the internet of people dealing with coronavirus in China, people wearing water bottles on their heads and kind of making a joke of it all. And that has absolutely changed in the last couple of weeks, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
So obviously topic today, guys, is COVID-19, the coronavirus, and how obviously relating it to how it's going to affect or how it could affect local real estate markets throughout Greater Vancouver. Just kind of going to start by sharing what we know about it, our uneducated medical perspectives, and then how we are going to be dealing with it in our real estate practice, and then how it could potentially affect real estate over the next 2, 3, 6 months.
Yeah, and we're on the front line, so I think the listener would get the most value out of our I guess, predictions on how this may unfold, what we're seeing currently in the real estate market, some potential scenarios over the next few months for the remaining of the year, because we're getting more and more questions from sellers and buyers on should we wait, should we buy now? So the hope is from this episode, we're going to share how we're dealing with COVID-19 and what we think might be some potential or some hypothetical situations of the real estate market around the corner. Because outside of this, there's a lot of other things going on too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Maybe let's just start with what we know. So not a lot. It's difficult to, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are in the same boat of it's difficult to watch the news, read all the headlines, and try to decipher what is accurate information and what is just kind of spammed at you, clickbaity stuff online. Obviously, this is a time where we need to be very cautious moving forward in terms of trying to flatten that curve like we've been recommended from the Health Minister of Canada. Trudeau had a big announcement yesterday that they're basically shutting down the borders to anyone who is not Canadian or American moving forward. Big news. I've never seen that in my life.
Stumble on his forgetting to leave out the Americans.
Totally. Hey, you definitely backtracked.
Oh, yeah. Politics.
Yeah.
Yes. But sorry, I cut you off.
That's okay. The Health Minister of Canada has basically forbid any social gatherings over 50 moving forward as well. Businesses are closing their doors or asking people to work from home. I know I've got some family in the sports bar industry, so that definitely affects a lot of local businesses. The brewery industry, of course. There's a lot of changes, and it's brand new.
We're in the tasting room right now of Steel and Oak, and today we're announcing that basically the tasting room will be closing for drinking on site. So, I guess from the hospitality world, I think what's going on in the government's head is they're concerned about impacting so many businesses. And I mean, you and I both know if there's a social gathering of 40 people versus 50 plus, there's still a lot of opportunity there for infection and viruses to flourish. So, my hope was from yesterday's announcement was that they would just tell us what to do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as harsh as what we're being recommended through the media. So that could come today, that could come tomorrow. Everything can change. It's early days, but I guess because we haven't had a big wave of this hit Canada yet, I mean, I think the question going through people's minds is when and how severely do we react?
Sure.
Do we be that proactive and isolate ourselves right now? Or do we kind of wait and see how this pans out before we strictly enforce this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do we know what really changed in the last week? Because it seems like it was only a week ago Trudeau announced that we are not closing borders. We don't think disallowing people into Canada is really going to affect the spread. And yesterday, obviously, that changed.
Yeah, I think the big changes were just some strong, or I guess some harsh announcements from global authorities on health.
Yeah.
And a lot of fear, a lot of fear. So I think everything kind of snowballs together. There's, the financial markets have been hit hard, and that's because of fear. So I can't really think one pinpoint. When you look at yes, it is spreading throughout the globe, but I'm not an expert to interpret that data. That's where the confusion comes in.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to kind of what's changing in real estate. And really, it's just been over the last, less than a week almost, really. What's changing in real estate?
Yeah, let's talk about the conversations we're having with people and how we're dealing with this right now. So, from the buyer and seller perspective, we're confused. They're asking us questions, and quite frankly, fortunately, they understand that we don't have the answers. But from the seller side, we've shifted from the tactic of, well, one, there are a few people that are holding off on listing and just want to wait for this to ride out. But there are some people that, have to sell. And the ones that have to sell are proceeding. So we are continuing to list properties. The difference being we're not necessarily promoting open houses. So we've closed down open houses. It's showing by appointment. And we're also having the conversation with our sellers that anything can change at any point in time. So if there's an announcement where it is unsafe to be outside and show properties, and it is best to just isolate yourself in your home, and that becomes the norm, then these listings, yes, will have to get postponed. I mean, there was a big release from the real estate board yesterday where I guess it changed one of its rules that MLS listings during this COVID-19 time don't necessarily have to be available for showings, which was a requirement before and obvious in today's world. So I think the number one thing from the seller's side is you can still list a property. Just recognize that we don't know. There could be an announcement any day moving forward that might deem it appropriate to take it off the market or not show the property. But right now, open houses aren't wise. It's best to kind of control the environment, get one group at a time, have a lot of hand sanitizer there. And basically the sellers, the buyers, everyone has to be on board and just recognize that there's going to be some buyers that don't show up. And I think I saw a note in Realtor Remarks, if you're sellers and you're elderly, it's probably best not to list your property today. That's a higher risk than I would feel comfortable with. But from the selling side, Denny, does anything come to mind that from the conversations you've had?
Well, I think it is just kind of outlining how business practices are going to be adjusting a little bit. And I had one seller yesterday whose husband who has had some health conditions, and their concern is just having people who they don't know in their home. And I think that's a very valid concern, and it's going to be fairly common in the next couple months for people to postpone listings just based on not knowing who's going to be coming through their home. So I think just having those conversations early with clients, explaining how our business has changed, that we are doing one-on-one showings rather than having 6, 8, 10 groups running through your house at one time. We are trying to use different cleanliness products if we can find them. But like using hand sanitizer on the way in, some I've seen some agents using gloves, like everyone walking into the property is wearing gloves. It's just those products are difficult to find at the moment.
Yeah, I've never sanitized door handles
so many times.
In this last weekend. But yeah, hand sanitizer, big thing. And then just, I would say from the open houses that I experienced last weekend, people still showed up, but it was a little quieter than expected.
Sure.
Yeah, and I definitely had a few. I mean, one of them was on the new S Key, a little bit of an older crowd. And I definitely had a couple that did not want to touch anything. So I was opening doors for them. So there is still fear, even if you are out there looking at places.
Totally.
Now, on the buy side of things, obviously that comes to the buyer's comfort level of going into other people's homes. But if you're a buyer and you see a listing that ticks all the boxes, there's no harm in having your realtor inquire about the listing. They may be showing it. You still have opportunity to see it. If you don't feel comfortable seeing it, then just sit on the sidelines and wait. So it really comes down to your comfort level. And, right now, I would imagine that we'll see listing inventory decrease over the coming weeks. So I think there will be less listings available. There might be a few less buyers on the market because of market uncertainty, stock market downturn. And but my thought is right now, the logic behind the conversations we've had with sellers is we feel that the supply and demand equation during this uncertain time is still favorable to the sellers right now. That could change in the coming weeks or coming months, but at this current moment in time, from what we're seeing in the markets we work in, it's still more of a seller's market. And this is for typical condos, townhouses, and call it houses under 1.5 in suburbs close to downtown Vancouver. I mean, any disagreement with that?
No, I think that's probably just due to the demographic of who is the typical purchaser for those types of properties. I think, like you mentioned, the downsizer type product, who's likely an older individual that's purchasing that, is probably going to be hit harder than, that entry level condo or that single family home that's entry level price point in that neighborhood, because those types of buyers are likely 30 to 40. And it seems like they're not as necessarily concerned about the health risks as the older individuals.
So I guess because I think we want to take this episode in a direction of what's going to happen moving forward and all the factors that are going on today. But I mean, to sum up what's currently happening at this current moment in time, our team is still running into multiple offer situations. We're still seeing more of a seller's market than a buyer market for the price points we operate in. And we're still showing properties. That could change. That absolutely could change. But what is going to happen moving forward? And how weird is it going to get in the next few weeks? My opinion is it depends. And it depends on a lot of things, because there's more than just COVID-19 happening right now. We have, the impact from the financial markets that it's caused, which I feel will impact some segments of the local market. I imagine the luxury properties, the West Vancouver markets, the markets where they're more impacted by they're just the higher wealth, the luxury. I think that's going to get hit. And not just because of the stock market, also because it wasn't trending upward as much as other products were prior to this COVID-19.
Yeah.
So I'm more hesitant to think that a 2-bedroom condo in New West will take a complete pivot and go downward next month, based on the upward trend that it was experiencing up until now.
Yeah.
But the 3 to 5 million plus high-end suburb home that wasn't trending upward, that was just basically going from ghost town to some buyers, I could see that getting impacted. So I guess when we're talking about the market, recognize there are many different markets in this city. And I personally had a friend and a buyer remove subjects on a place last Monday. And it was Monday was a day where there was less fear, but still a lot of fear out there, a lot of news. And just to give them peace of mind, because I noticed zero slowdown in the market, I reached out to 3 agents and a prominent mortgage broker just to see if they've seen any impact on the market. Is it busy? It was a $1.1 million home, and I just wanted to just validate my thoughts because I haven't seen a slowdown. And every one of them said it was smoking busy, haven't seen an impact. That being said, a few days later, the mortgage broker did get back to me with a few scenarios where they did have some jeopardized deals. So to say there's zero impact would be incorrect, but to say that percentage of people that are being impacted the most, whether their deposits tied up in financial markets, whether they get let go from their job, whether they're just fearful of everything that's going on, I believe that that's still a smaller percentage of the buyer segment. And I think that even with those people in mind, and let's call it a random guess of 10 to 20% of the market that we're working in, if we get 80% of the buyers show up to the door, I still think that's going to be a seller's market. I don't think there's enough sellers to eat up 80% of the buyers that will show around the corner. Now, there's different scenarios, of course. But right now, we have financial markets downward trending. We have the Canadian dollar downward trending. We have lowest mortgage rates I've seen in years. We have a looser stress test. And then, Strata Insurance is less of a story, but Strata Insurance for certain products. All of those things, all of those factors are are impacting the market. So, if you have a buyer come up to you, Denny, and they say, should I buy now or should I wait? Let's say they're buying, let's call it they're selling their condo and buying an entry-level home. I mean, that's a common thing that we're running into.
Yeah.
What's the conversation there?
I think maybe it's important for us to mention the date.
The date,
which is Tuesday.
Yeah, because this could change
March
Wednesday.
17th. Because it seems like we're finding out new information hourly almost. This podcast could be irrelevant in 4 days from now. So we will keep you updated though. Buyers, it's an interesting conversation. So 2019 was a big slowdown year where we saw a lot of product, depending on what it was, where it was, drop in prices 10 to 20% in some cases. And buyers were kind of sitting on the sidelines throughout the middle of 2019, waiting for the quote unquote bottom. The fall turned around quickly. We saw low inventory in the fall. We saw buyer activity pick up significantly. Multiple offers were back and prices started to climb late in 2019. And that continued heavily into early 2020. So I almost look at this potentially, and it's a little bit of a guess, but it almost feels like a second chance for buyers where they may have more leverage in the next couple months while there is uncertainty and while these health concerns continue to grow. The number of homes for sale likely will be lower. And even just from our experience yesterday after the announcement, we had a couple sellers who postponed listing. And I think that's going to be pretty prevalent in the next month or two, just with concerns of people you don't know coming into your house. But from a buyer perspective, like you mentioned, interest rates have dropped significantly. You likely have more leverage now just because of the concerns out there that this could be a good time to buy.
Yeah.
And as soon as the health scares go away, whether it's 3, 6, 9 months from now, I don't know. But as soon as they go away, I think there's going to be so many people that were sitting on the sidelines waiting to list and waiting to buy that the market activity is going to pick up significantly.
Yeah, and I will say, when you're saying buyers have a second chance or an opportunity, to me, what I feel is when you look at how low the sales activity was last year, and the lack of supply that's been available this year, and how early we are this year, I feel there's a lot of people that aren't living in a home they want to live in right now. You know, there's a lot of people that haven't upgraded that want to upgrade. There's a lot of buyers, first-time buyers that are renting that want to buy their place, and that. I mean, the demand can only be so low for so long, you know? So yes, you know, there's this mentality where, you know, there's fear and uncertainty out there, and you can think alike with the group where you wait for confidence and then you buy when everyone else buys, or you can go against the grain and as Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful. So, I mean, I like the idea of buying when there's peak fear. And that doesn't mean that, you know, if you're buying in the next few weeks or a few months and there's still peak fear headlines out there, that doesn't mean that this is the bottom. I mean, there could be something around the corner. This is a new market, a different circumstance. But, you know, quite frankly, I just would be shocked to see that the supply loosens up so much and the buyer demand that exists up until this point would go away, or go away to the point of another downturn in the real estate market. You know, last March, the headlines read for the real estate board, the lowest sales activity in 33 years. So my guess is that the headlines for April's real estate board market stats probably won't say this March is slower than last, even with what's going on. It's probably going to be a creative headline with COVID-19. Yeah. But I would imagine at least by April, we're not going to get the headings that the market's crashing. And this is where the uncertainty comes in, because if there is some stats that appear in the coming months that say the market is on a downward trend or slow, that could be enough to maybe shift this, but this would mean that we would have back-to-back down years, and could very well happen. I don't know, Denny. It's it's a hard one to predict. But let me put my prediction out there because you might as well have one. And if I'm right, I'll stand like a genius. My prediction would be I feel that the stock market is getting hammered right now. It is crashing. It is beyond correction. It is entering the crash zone. But I feel like it's going to have a sharp low point. And as soon as this virus as soon as there's confidence and less fear in the headlines, and maybe that's a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, whatever that is, I feel that we're going to see a bounce back in the financial markets. And it may not get to previous peak levels, but if we see a 20, 30% climb in the financial markets in, call it 2 months from now, and we look at our dollar being at an all-time low, so or quite low, not all-time low, and we look at mortgage rates being very low, and we look at the stress test being a little looser, I feel like at the time where our market should show signs of crashing, there's all these other factors that will come into play and bring confidence to the market. Mm-hmm. So if the market did not rebound and 2-3 months from now, it was at the bottom and it's not coming back up, that's a different thing. But if 2-3 months from now, or even a month from now, we're rebounding upward, I think all the other factors are working in the seller's market or the real estate market over the impact of the COVID-19. So my guess, if I were to put my money on it this year, is I think that prices in 3 months for 2-bedroom condos in say New Westminster, Port Moody suburb markets, houses that are 1.2, 1.3 range in these markets as well, I feel that they're going to be around the same. Mm-hmm. If there is a devastating crash to come, I feel that would be because of market fear, because stock markets haven't rebounded, and I feel that would probably come in the fall. Mm. But what do I know? This is a guess.
I totally agree. I think I don't know how long this is going to last for. I think inventory is going to be a lot lower in April, May than it typically is in a typical year, and I don't think the buyer demand has gone down enough to put downward pressure on prices. Even just from last night, which is the day Trudeau made the announcement, is we had a buyer get into multiple offers. I had a buyer who wanted to offer on something but got scared off because there was 5 offers already on the table. I had a realtor on social media mention that they had 10 offers on a property yesterday, and we had a listing last night get an accepted offer in week 1. So inventory's low. There's a lot of buyers out there, and I don't think enough of them are concerned enough yet by what's been announced and what's going on in Canada specifically that they're going to sit on the sidelines for very long.
Yeah, and just to be like, we're referring to this as seller's market. We're not seeing like just barely a seller's market. We're seeing a very strong seller's market when we're looking at this data. Like, we are seeing trends that are in line with 2016, 2017 madness in the last, say, month or two. Yeah. So it's hard for me to believe that it's going to pivot the opposite direction. It could, absolutely could. There's unknown. There's so many things that could come into play here. But I don't think it's. I think it's going to be a delayed market. Mm-hmm. I think the sales that are going to happen over this next 2 to 6 weeks, uncertain time, I think the sales volume is going to be lower. But once this gets past us and the fear subsides and it's back to normal, we're going to be in, say, May, June, July, sunny weather, and stock markets, my guess, will be upward trending. Mortgage rates will probably still be quite low. And I'm bringing a lot of my thoughts when I go back to 2008, 2009. When I first entered the business, I'm really kind of looking at what happened then. Mm-hmm. And I can recall some clients in the summer of 2008, get mortgages for 5.99%, 5.79%. And then there's the financial crisis due to the credit crunch and the banking industry just absolutely crashing. And then the fall was a sharp downturn, and it bottomed out in January of 2009. And I remember January 2009, peak fear. And I remember a real estate headline on the news saying 20, real estate market's going to drop 20 more percent over the next year. And it literally went the opposite direction, 20%. And that was also an interesting year because that was when the swine flu came in. So the swine flu came in the early months of 2009. And because the market crashed prior to the swine flu, it had an upward trend during its lifespan. So it had, there might have been some exceptions in some markets, but Greater Vancouver market was virtually unaffected by it. And SARS was too long ago for me to remember what happened there, but I do think there probably was some impact there. But I looked up the other day the impact of pandemics on markets, stock markets, and it's hard to find a correlation. But in this case, there is a direct correlation. So there's nothing really like this, that I could in my short history.
Totally.
Yeah.
For me in my real estate career, which is 6 years now, the most similar thing is the foreign buyer tax of 2016. The difference there for me looking at it is there was a lot of inventory in 2016. The market was climbing significantly and people were wanting to cash in Greater Vancouver real estate, and there was a lot available. The foreign buyer tax comes in and buyers start sitting on the sidelines just wanting to wait and see how this affects the market. I think there's a big chance that a lot of buyers do kind of have the same strategy and want to sit on the sidelines for 3 months. But 2016, we were coming off a couple busy years in real estate, and 2020, we're coming off one of the slowest years in real estate I've seen. So I think the buildup of buyer demand is going to outweigh, in the short term anyway, people sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah. And I think we're lucky to be in Canada and British Columbia. I feel that we will be less impacted by this than other countries, obviously. There will be an economic impact. There are people in the event industry and the hospitality industry that are getting let go, losing their jobs. So there is going to be a local economic impact. I'm taking that into mind with these predictions.
Yeah.
So even considering the likely economic impact, maybe not the likely worst case, but the likely impact, you're right. I think the demand's still there compared to the supply.
The other side of the equation, obviously, is someone looking to sell their home. And even in the last week or two, a lot of potential sellers are asking us, is this should I wait till this kind of blows over? Should I wait a few months? Or do I list now? Like, how do I navigate that timing?
So let's talk about a few different scenarios for sellers, because not every seller is alike. If you are a seller that is upgrading, you're selling to buy up, I don't see any reason on waiting, personally. The only exception being if you don't get a response because you can't show your property, because of whatever, you don't get an offer. People stay indoors. But sellers that are buying up, I think there's no harm in trying. Of course, the strategy may have to evolve if we can't show the property, but absolutely no harm in trying. And as Denny mentioned previously, we've been experiencing multiple offers. So that's where this logic's coming from, and a lower supply in general. So there's less competition out there for them. If you're a seller that is, say, just selling a property because it's an investment property and you have an extra property, my thought on this is right now the real estate market is still maintaining its price point for now. And financial markets have been absolutely hammered. So from an investment selling perspective, I think it's a great time to shuffle the deck. So my thought for the seller that is selling a product that hasn't been that impacted yet, I would sell, try to get a quick close, and reinvest in something that's been hit harder. So I think this is there's opportunities out there. If your money's tied up in Canadian real estate that is doing pretty well, there's other things that aren't doing as well. So it might be a good opportunity to invest in something else. I could see multifamily commercial markets getting a little more impacted by this. Industrial. I mean, there's been some commercial products that have gone on a tear and are just so inflated. I'd love to see them, get a little bit of a backtrack. So I could see that market being a little more impacted. But yeah, if you're a seller selling an investment property and you're willing to reinvest in something else, I think there's going to be opportunity there. If you're just selling out of fear, though, that's where I would question it. If you're selling out of fear and you have no intent to reinvest those funds, It depends on the product. You know, if and I feel that when you spoke to realtors, we all felt the market was upward trending, and we all felt, I mean, I talked to a number of people that were kind of thinking, by 2022, 2023, that's when we're going to start seeing that next sort of new version of the 2016 market.
Yeah.
That's when we're going to see the new version of prices in the city, higher prices. So the thought is, you know, if you're looking to sell just out of fear, have some. I don't know if that's the right time. I don't know if I would sell out of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right. I think it totally depends on the property type that you have, and that strategy could absolutely change depending on who you are, where you are, what type of home you have. So I think it's important to have those conversations. Don't shy away from selling at a time like this, because there is going to be a lot less competition, I think.
Yeah, we're in a smaller market here in New Westminster. I mean, we work in a lot of markets outside of New West, but when you have, I think the other day there was a house listed and I had 3 people ask me about the house. So when I am one realtor and I have 3 different groups of buyers and individuals asking about a property that shows up in the market, I mean, that to me it shows, hey, sellers, not a bad time. Like it's a great seller's market.
Totally.
Yeah.
We had the exact same thing happen yesterday with a new listing in New West as well.
Yeah. So, I don't, I'm curious to see what's around the corner, Denny. I don't think there's much else we can cover because we are in reaction mode. We're waiting to see. We're looking at the headlines just like everybody else. And if we did this podcast last Tuesday, it would be a different podcast.
So different.
If we did it next Tuesday, who knows what it will be. This might be all, irrelevant. But right now, I still feel confident in the real estate market. I feel that weird times are ahead. But I think we're going to get through these weird times. And I think that our market's going to still upward trend next year.
Looking forward to seeing what happens. It's an unseen, unprecedented event time that we are kind of going through. And who knows? These are our best guesses, but things could change quickly.
Yeah.
As we've seen.
We'll do episode 2 of this next week.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone.